First of all, I'm Chip Leon, and I just want to thank you for having me. It's actually a really humbling experience. Yeah, I mean, when I was reading about you guys, and as she mentioned, I've known Nancy Hill for quite some time. I knew she was on the board here or some such thing, and interacting a lot with you guys. She talked about it all the time. So here, Pippa, Jared, the rest of the crew were kind enough to shoot over an email and say, come on over. I was flabbergasted. Oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about? You know, if you guys are the engineers of pop culture, what have I ever done? Actually, I should be sitting over there, and you guys should be teaching me. So what I decided, though, is that I'm good at sharing stories. Actually, telling stories is kind of technically my job. I've been mostly on the client side, but I've also been on the agency side once, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But you made me think, you know, after 20 some odd years of marketing, advertising, promotions, like, what do I do? It's like one of those things when my mom would say, what do you do? I'm like, well, I don't know, marketing. Well, what's that? I don't know. So actually, you tested me a little from the beginning. And so, I mean, heroes is far too kind. I think of, you know, like John Wren or Gandhi or, you know, Mother Teresa. Those are heroes. I'm just a schmuck in the marketing advertising world that have done a couple things that I'd like to share with you. So again, I am not, the road less traveled is how I describe it. I'm a jack of all trades, maybe a master of none, and how I got to where I am is just a convoluted story. Yep, that's me. A year after I was born. My name is Chip because when I was born I had really fat cheeks, and the first thing my mom thought was I was a chipmunk storing nuts for the winter. So it stuck, and 40 some odd years later, no one will call me my real name, which is Hayden Lewis Leon III, which is never mind here nor there. The history of our family is pretty interesting. My great-great-grandmother went from the East Coast to the West Coast in a covered wagon. My grandmother moved from Texas to Hollywood in the 30s to become a Hollywood starlet. My grandfather helped men from space land in the ocean. He was with the Navy. My dad also, with the Navy, was a nuclear engineer, was on submarines fighting in the Cold War against the Russians. He also goes on record as the person with the highest IQ I've ever met, which makes our conversation short because mine's not as large. Before I get to that, I went to school at Miami University in Ohio. My degree was business psychology. Why? I just didn't really know what I was going to do, and that was the path I was on, and that's what I took. I did get a minor in fine arts, which was really my passion, sculpting, painting, drawing, and all that good stuff. But, you know, in retrospect, business and psychology has worked out kind of well. You learn how to read people. You learn how to understand, you know, their emotions and emotions and what makes people tick. And I found in marketing that's really beneficial, particularly when you look at all the research that needs to be done before you ever put out a campaign or a slogan, and to almost be predictive of what will lead them to your product, service, or which have you. So that's kind of my background. In between, I was like a ski bum, and then I worked for an environmental consulting firm, and again, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I woke up one day, I said, I want to be in sports. Okay. So through a few phone calls, I found myself in Chicago working for Wilson Golf. Now I'm going to date myself. I was telling Pippa, this is before the internet. In fact, my first job was to set up the first consumer hotline, 1-800-GO-WILSON, which is still, believe it or not, in effect today. But I started off on the lowest rung, answering phones, pretty much taking calls from consumers, asking questions about golf products. And again, you think, okay, I got paid like $6.50 an hour, or who knows what it was, but it was an amazing experience because you're talking directly with consumers, and they're telling you what they like and don't like, and this was fantastically interesting to all the product people and developing all kinds of new things in the golf world. To make a long story short, went on and did all kinds of promotions and something called Dynafit, which is, again, still around today. But I ended up going next door, actually, to True Value. True Value, back then, again, I'm dating myself, Home Depot really wasn't in existence. It was just starting. So the heavy players were True Value and Ace Hardware. And we, at that time, really needed to differentiate ourselves. We needed to reinvent ourselves. Ace was the king. We had 500 stores nationwide. We had just acquired another 500 stores to be 1,000. And so we kind of reinvented ourselves. Help is around the corner. So strategically, location was important. These are family-owned businesses, so being friendly and knowledgeable was really important. So help is just around the corner became kind of our mantra and tagline. We partnered with the NFL, Major League Baseball, NASCAR, more sports entities on top of that to be the official hardware store, again, of each of those entities. So, and this was back when sports marketing, there was no real sports marketing. It was just, you know, you were paying millions of bucks to these folks to have a space and place in their inventory. So really kind of a cool and exciting time with True Value. I then went to, it was actually called Bank One. It's now part of Chase Bank. I couldn't find a Bank One logo. They're all gone. But the opposite was true. Bank One had more than 200 entities. They were official bank of the Dallas Cowboys, but they were also official bank of, I don't know, the Strawberry Festival in Colorado. And so they said, hey, we need to really congeal our brand. We need to stand for something and not have too many things and just focus on a few properties. So that was a good time. I met my wife there, the only person to want to do cartwheels in the middle of a bank, and I said, all right, she's for me. So definitely was appreciative that I went there. The next was my first and only agency experience, Play. Play's now a part of Profit, but Andy Stefanovich was the founder. I went to school with him. He was looking for a guy that had been on the client side with various experience. While I was there, we worked with Rolling Rock, American Express, Kellogg's, GM, the U.S. Olympic Committee, Post, I think we had a couple other cars, SunTrust Bank. And as an example, what were we? We were a creative and ideation agency purely. We actually didn't do any of the execution or production. Martin Agency was up the street in Richmond, Virginia, and often they would handle the execution. We were purely ideation. Imagine that. Kellogg's, and the one assignment is just, you know, ingrained in my brain, came to us, literally sat down, and the brief was, so people are not eating cereal as much anymore, not even having breakfast anymore. Everyone's lives are cluttered, and so they get in the car and they go to work and they miss breakfast, and sales are declining and people are getting unhealthy. We want 200 ideas to reinvent breakfast. 200 ideas, oh my God. We worked on it 24 hours a day for like 2 weeks. And for one full day, we presented 200 ideas. To make a long story short, they got whittled down to about 10, then 5, and then in front of Kellogg's senior management, they picked one, and one, it was like a rice cake in the form of a CD, and they were packed in like CDs, and cars at the time had these CD slots, so the idea was you would stick your breakfast in the CD slots, you know, do it once on a Sunday, and every time you get in your car, there's breakfast. And I think I can't remember what the figures are, but went on to sell you know, millions of rice cakes. A few years back, right around that Chase time, one of my best friends from high school died in a ski accident of a brain injury. It was a simple little accident, but it was caused by not wearing a helmet. Her father happened to have the wherewithal. He's kind of an entrepreneur in the manufacturing and plastics world, believe it or not. So he set out to be a promoter of helmet safety and start a helmet company. And its unique differentiation was something called Zorbium foam that would absorb impact energy 10 times greater than the helmets that are out there currently. So the whole reason for the company was just promotion of helmet safety but also advanced helmet technology. Helmet technology had not advanced in literally like 50 years. So W Helmets was started. He gave me a call and said they've been working on it for 2 years, just the engineers and the scientists. We were partnered with the Cleveland Clinic and the head of neurology there. But this was the one time I had the chance to start a brand from scratch. It's similar to the one assignment for tomorrow and this week, linkedfa.com. Even though you can go to a site and you can see it exists, it really has not been launched yet. The whole goal is second quarter of next year. And here with W Helmets, there was no logo, there was no identity, there was no marketing, there was no nothing. We had no sales force. No one knew about us. So incredible opportunity if you ever get a chance to architect a brand from scratch. The considerations seemingly are 100x. It's also the one example when you work for a small startup, you get to see things really happen. When you're at a Fortune 100 company, you spend millions of dollars and you try to give the figures about how the needle's moving, but when you work for a small startup, you really see it move. And the example I'll give you was our advertising budget for the fall that we launched was like $200,000. And we hired this cool little agency in Colorado that came up with some really fun creative, and we spent every dime on print. Again, there wasn't really much internet around that time. Did a little. We had a website and all that good stuff. But we're all sitting around the office. There were about 30 of us. And, you know, this is late summer. You know, buying publication for the ski industry starts back in the spring of the following year. And we're sitting around and, you know, making helmets literally 100 yards away. And all of a sudden, the phone is ringing, like, incessantly off the hook. We're like, why are people, how do people know? That first day, we had like 500 phone calls. On a normal day, we got like 8 at best. 500 phone calls. Someone went out to the mailbox, got the mail, and the first 3 issues of Ski Magazine, Powder Magazine, and one other one with our phone number on it, and full-page ads were there. It was like people were reading it and calling in. You could see advertising actually works. So pretty cool experience back at that time. With the ability to be able to see, you know, things really happen. And then I went to Motorola. And so I could talk about Motorola I was there for 8 years. I could talk about multitudes of opportunities in any one of these. I picked just one facet of my time at Motorola, and it has to do with, it has to do with evolution and brand architecture. So what I want to do is show you, there are a lot of good visuals with regards to seeing how the brand progressed. But back to my original point, and to thank you all, after 20 years, I wondered, what have I done, you know? It's just a whole bunch of experiences where I've had the chance to design and make, the opportunity to invent and realize a particular idea, a project as Webster defines it. So you all actually gave me the inspiration for my new consultancy's name, which is Architecton, so Chief Builder. So thank you. As engineers of pop culture, you made me think a little bit and work a little bit harder.